Pakistan's leaders faced new questions today about their ability to safeguard the country after Taliban fighters stormed a prison and freed more than 250 inmates. We have a report narrated by Kylie Morris of Independent Television News.
Local television excitedly relayed glimpses of what was a sophisticated midnight attack by jihadis on the prison. So sophisticated that booby traps were set to thwart reinforcements who came to the aid of the embattled few guarding it. An injured police sergeant, emblematic of the fight that was lost to what's thought to have been dozens of Pakistan Taliban. In the full light of morning, survivors gave vivid detail of the onslaught.
When they started shooting, we parked up in front of the main gate in an armoured vehicle to fight back. Then the gate exploded. We opened fire. Then our vehicle was hit by a rocket launcher or a mortar. 2 of my men were killed on the spot.
6 policemen died in all, as well as a number of Shiite Muslim prisoners, unfortunate enough to have been identified by the Sunni fighters. Rather than liberation, they faced execution, their throats slit. But behind these walls, the real objective was fellow Taliban fighters held prisoner. Eyewitnesses spoke of some attackers with loud hailers, calling out the names of those they most sought to liberate. But KPK province had been warned, with suggestions the threat of a jailbreak was known to the authorities in the days before the attack. Still, they had no answer when the Taliban fighters wearing police uniforms roared out of the darkness on motorbikes. The Pakistan jailbreaks repeat a pattern established in Yemen, Libya and most recently Iraq. Only last week, Al-Qaeda claimed responsibility for an assault that led to a mass breakout from the notorious Abu Ghraib prison.
The leader of the Pakistani province where last night's attack took place said he'd been told this week that prison security was good. He vowed to investigate and said heads will roll, no one will be spared. Israelis and Palestinians have agreed to try to work out a final status peace agreement within 9 months. Secretary of State John Kerry gave that word today after 2 days of initial talks in Washington. The lead negotiators for each side shook hands after the first talks in nearly 3 years, and Kerry said he's convinced peace is possible.
While I understand the skepticism, I don't share it, and I don't think we have time for it. I firmly believe the leaders, the negotiators, and citizens invested in this effort can make peace for one simple reason: because they must. A viable 2-state solution is the only way this conflict can end, and there is not much time to achieve it, and there is no other alternative.
The 2 sides will hold substantive talks again sometime in the next 2 weeks, either in Israel or the West Bank. The military group Hamas, which rules in Gaza, has refused to join the negotiations. In Egypt, the European Union's foreign policy chief was allowed to meet with ousted President Mohamed Morsi at an undisclosed location. Catherine Ashton was the first outside official to see Morsi since the military forced him from power earlier this month. Ashton said Morsi is well and that they had an open and frank discussion.
We talked for 2 hours. We talked in depth. He has access to information in terms of TV, newspapers, so we were able to talk about the situation. And we were able to talk about the need to move forward.
Ashton also met with the country's interim leaders, including the army chief, as well as officials of Morsi's Muslim Brotherhood. Also today, France called for Morsi to be released from custody. The driver of the train in last week's deadly crash in Spain was talking on the phone when the train derailed, killing 79 people. Investigators said today he had taken a call from a railroad controller and apparently was consulting a document. They also reported the train was doing 95 miles an hour, nearly twice the speed limit. The findings were taken from the train's black box recorders. President Obama today tried to rally support for a plan to cut corporate tax rates if Republicans agree to spend more on job creation. It was his latest bid to get action on his economic policy initiatives.
I came here to offer a framework that might help break through some of the political logjam in Washington.
The backdrop was a sprawling distribution facility for Amazon.com in Chattanooga, Tennessee. The company announced Monday it's adding 7,000 jobs. The president said it's time to create even more jobs by cutting corporate tax rates to 28% from the current 35%. At the same time, he'd spend more on public works and other jobs programs paid for by one-time changes in the tax laws.
I'm willing to work with Republicans on reforming our corporate tax code as long as we use the money from transitioning to a simpler tax system for a significant investment in creating middle-class jobs. That's the deal. Now it's time for Republicans to lay out their ideas. If they've got a better plan to bring back more manufacturing jobs here to Tennessee and around the country, then let them know. Let me know. I want to hear them.
But Senate Republicans complained Mr. Obama has given up on the idea of overhauling both corporate and individual tax rates.
Sometimes it just seems that this administration never misses an opportunity to grow this economy.
Pennsylvania Senator Pat Toomey said he'd hoped for an agreement to simplify the overall tax code.
I thought we might be able to make some progress on that. I'm losing confidence that we can when Senator Reid insists that tax reform has to start at about $1 trillion of tax increases. And the president says today that even corporate tax reform, the part where I thought we were close to a consensus, has to be another opportunity to raise taxes on the American people.
The opening bids on tax action come as Congress makes ready to start a 5-week summer recess on Friday. There was strong new evidence today of a recovering housing market. The Standard & Poor's Case-Shiller Index showed home prices in May surged more than 12% from the same month last year. It's the largest gain since March of 2006. But on Wall Street, stocks mostly marked time ahead of tomorrow's policy statement from the Federal Reserve. The Dow Jones Industrial Average lost 1 point to close at 15,520. The Nasdaq rose 17 points to close at 3616. The Senate moved this evening to confirm 5 presidential nominations to the National Labor Relations Board. The independent agency helps resolve labor disputes, but delaying tactics in the Senate have stalled confirmations of new members for years. The impasse was resolved in a deal 2 weeks ago to allow votes on nominees for executive branch positions. Those are some of the day's major stories. Now back to Jeff.